Self-reflection, values, and principles. Can the characters on Power Book To Go's change who they are? And do they deserve a second chance? I think the ability to change is sometimes confused with the desire to change. If someone is motivated to change and willing to make the necessary changes, then why not? But we've all had the saying, a leopard never changes their spots. And so in this recap and breakdown for episode 2, we're going to focus on all the major talking points from To Thine Own Self, looking at a bunch of clues, Easter eggs, and a few theories. We'll be focusing on the theme of being yourself, staying true to your values and principles, self-deception, and how some characters have to make some life-changing decisions.
You think I can't handle a fucking war by myself, Uncle Tommy?
I know you can't ride one out from the back of a fucking college classroom. Your father tried to ride one out from between two worlds. That's what fucked him up. If you want to survive, you're either a civilian or a gangster. There ain't no in between. Stay in your lane, all in or all out. If you get distracted, you did. Did you fucking feel that? This is the game. Every fucking moment of your life, if you ain't pushing, you falling.
Now, episode 2 picks up 1 month after episode 1. Towards the end of the episode, Detective Carter did mention that he was investigating Junior's death, which happened 1 month prior, and so did Detective Felicia Lewis. So a few weeks have passed since the truce, Monet waking up from a coma, and the fallout from Junior's death. Episode 2 also takes place across a span of 2 days, so that's how we're going to approach and split this particular breakdown. Now, we see Carter picking up a small win by raiding the Russian drug shipment, where they then start asking the right questions. They were questioning the RICO case that Junior was investigating, because neither of them believed that Junior's death was as it seems, and rightfully so. It was just way too much of a convenience. Tariq St Patrick's face kept coming up on the radar of law enforcement, Junior investigating Tariq, and then being found dead on a campus with an alleged school shooter who happened to have been taken out by Tariq St Patrick. So the task force certainly isn't stupid. They know what 2 + 2 is, which was a little callback to Monet grilling Kane in season 3. However, it's one thing believing and knowing the truth, but it's a complete different ballgame trying to prove it, especially against the St. Patrick. But straight away, you could tell that Carter was here to lay down a marker. He knew something didn't quite add up, and he was going to ruffle some feathers to get some answers. With Brayden and Tariq, we pick up with them at Stansfield. Across the campus there's also a lot more security, awareness being raised, posters around gun violence and safety. Although you probably would have thought that should have happened way back in season 1, or at least after all the deaths in season 2. We also see the Western name being taken down from Stansfield, because their name is completely tarnished. It's also something that seems to be following Brayden around. Sins of their fathers or family, just like in some instances for Tariq. He's now having to bear the brunt of his family's mistakes, although he isn't exactly clean himself. It was also said that he has a new job in real estate, while his family get ready to leave New York, taking Brayden's advice that he gave them at the end of season 3.
I think you guys should just all get out of the city for a while. Avoid all the media, cops, all that bullshit.
Now I know a lot of people will probably be a little disappointed, because they were probably hoping for Trace's death, but it is goodbye to the Westerns for now. For Tariq, he finds himself in a very similar position to the beginning of season 3. There's a narrative around campus where not many people seem to believe the story around what really happened last month, but it looks like Tariq has gone past the stage of caring. Where we saw him trying to change the campus narrative on Rashad Tate's advice last season, this season, all he's thinking about is, how can he build his empire back? How did I not see this shit coming? What can I do to get back on top? They've got no product, no money, no alliances, and no distribution network. In his words, he thought he was smarter than everybody else, but that's also where the problem lies. He is smart, but never underestimate your enemies, and always plan all the way till the end. Law 29 from the 48 Laws of Power. You have to consider all the obstacles, all the twists and turns, all the betrayals, and all the circumstances, but he didn't, which is also why he now finds himself here. Although it's not quite such the fall from grace like Franklin Saint, but it is a reality check. He's gone from living the high life to the real life, working 3 jobs to get by while he's studying, like most of us have done in real life. It's ironic that both Tasha and Tariq are now having to work regular jobs just like regular civilians. I mean, all of this could have really been avoided had they listened to Ghost.
With all the intelligence, Tariq, all the advantages I fucking never had, that's the best you can do, a fucking drug dealer.
It's the best you could do, right?
Now with Kane and Drew, we see them coming over to a memorial for the Castillos, which wasn't exactly like Zeke's, but Kane's still looking for answers around who shot Monet, and he isn't afraid to use brute force to get those answers. However, for Drew, you can tell throughout episodes 1 and 2, he definitely misses Gordo, and he still holds Monet responsible. With Diana, we see her picking up a pregnancy test, which did later turn out to be positive. Definitely a bit more on that later on. With Effie, she's got some tough decisions to make. It's clear she still wants to go to Stanford. She also books an interview for the following day, but she's still caught in a world which, in her words, you're either in or you're out with a bullet. So a couple of these characters really do have big decisions to make. Now, after Carter's drug bust, Nomar senses an opportunity, fill the void of her losing Tariq's business with the Russians, and she tasks Obi to get that done. However, she also questions Obi's commitment. I did always believe that Nomar was always keeping Obi on a tight leash by not helping him with the green cards. For as long as he didn't have the green cards, he was reliant on Nomar, which meant he'd be more loyal. That was until Tariq stepped in, and Obi really is in big trouble because she's not impressed. Throughout the episode there were a couple of moments where you could tell the tide is turning with their business relationship, and we are going to get to those moments as well as a few clues later on. With Monet, she's still in somewhat of a rehabilitation phase. To keep her company taking good care of her is Jeanette Stewart, and I will pop a character description on the screen just as a reminder. Now as Kane and Drew come home, they give her the bad news. There's still no word about who shot her. We've also got Kane believing they should be taking a closer look at Tariq, because he can sense that something doesn't quite add up, with Drew and Diana changing their tune, and he is right. But they also have another issue with Nomar looking to make a deal with the Russians, and as much as she wants to get some level of control back, Monet is still not 100%, and it showed multiple times throughout episode 2, especially when she was reminiscing with Jeanette. Jeanette reminded her of how she's made some questionable decisions, which I agree, she did. It's also where we saw the flashback of young Monet, Lorenzo, and Hurricane, which is where Kane got his nickname from, but also where we learned how impatient and stubborn Monet was, and still is. Over at Stansfield, they were back in class. The topic of discussion was evil and leadership, and whether evil is a necessary component of successful leadership. Now, as always, questions and statements like this can be perceived in so many different ways, and the only wrong answer is the one you can't back up. From my standpoint, just looking at the street and drug game aspect that many of these guys on Ghost find themselves in, you have to have evil traits, because that's what ensures survival. Even Ghost, back in the day, he killed Breeze. He also later sent Kanan down, getting rid of both, in order to protect himself and his future. Years later, he'd also stay true to who he was, by trying to convince Tariq to go down when he clearly said he'd take the fall. You have to be ruthless in protecting your future. You have to have fear and respect, because we've seen what happens in raising Kanan when you have one, but not the other. There can also be loyalty through fear, manipulation, deception, or even using people with influence in positions of power, just like how Carter threatened Davis, or using people's thumbscrews and weaknesses, like Effie later did with Vadim. But you also have to want it more than others, and everyone's motivation is always different. At this moment in time, Tariq's motivation comes from defeat, suffering, and shattered dreams. So out of the ashes may rise the phoenix. Now after class, we also saw Effie approaching Tariq to see whether they were good after she warned him about Kane in 401. And I think we can all agree with Tariq's response. Of course they weren't. Effie hasn't just betrayed Tariq once, she's gone behind his back 3 times. The one occasion which you can probably justify is the Lauren move, but going behind Tariq's back over and over again, you really can't blame Tariq for having this reaction. But I still do maintain, and I will stick to what I've said before, I can see them working together at some point in the future. I can definitely see Effie working on the inside for Tariq to help him achieve the end goal of reaching the top of the pyramid, and also for herself to go to Stanford. So let's wait and see. I think if Effie wants to make it up to Tariq, she's gonna have to do a hell of a lot more. Now later on, we also saw Effie having a conversation with Diana, where she warned her, which is also where I do actually kind of agree with Effie. Diana made a choice at the end of season 3, but now she's realizing just how difficult it really is. To make things even more complex, she's about to find out she's pregnant. Now for Effie, she doesn't have any time to waste. She booked a Stanford interview for tomorrow, and she knows the tuition isn't cheap. So, she approaches Nomar to get a bigger piece of the pie, and offers a woman's touch to maybe get the Russians on board, something Effie has used before in season 3. But the way Effie was able to bring them to the table wasn't exactly by her charm and charisma, or even threatening Vadim's daughter, but it was rather offering her help. And this just shows you how bad Effie actually wanted a bigger percentage, but also go to Stanford. Each of these moves that Effie made early on was done so with Stanford in the back of her mind. Now just before Vadim and Effie arrived to meet Nomar, Monet came through and said this was her city, and she didn't want Nomar making a deal with the Russians. Let's remember, they did come to a truce in 307, but it does seem like the truce was still very fragile. So this resulted in the whole deal blowing up for Nomar, and also ended up with Monet passing out, relying on Effie to take her home. Now while she was on her way home, this is where we saw yet another flashback. It was a young Monet and Jeanette being pulled over by the cops, with Monet hiding her piece in Kane's baby seat, very similar to what Tasha once had to do with Ghost.
We got pulled over. I was 7 months pregnant with our twins. James had a gun in the car. I hid the gun in my maternity dress.
Young Monet also going behind Lorenzo's back was quite ironic and quite funny at the same time, because it just had the Tejadas written all over it, going behind each other's backs, doing their own thing, wanting to be in control from day one. She said Lorenzo wanted this life in conversation with Diana, but she's the one who seems to have pushed the operation to grow when they were younger. On the other hand, Lorenzo said he'll provide for them and expand when it was right. Lorenzo also warned, do not mix Kane with business. So is it any surprise her kids act the way they do? They don't even seem to call Monet mom anymore, it's just simply Monet. I think from birth, it was always doomed from this moment. With Davis McLean, he's been suspended and he's hired Pella Tanaka to defend him, although she's doing more than just defending him. But the allegations are actually from Jenny Sullivan, and they include possessing a stolen police file which was obtained from Detective Whitman, bribing a parole officer which was for his brother Theo, violating conflict of interest by representing a client for murder while also with the murder victim's mother, which was of course Tariq and Monet Tejada. So it's no surprise that Davis finds himself in a whole load of shit with the bar committee. Whether he can fight this case, I'm gonna go ahead and predict he loses his license, which only pushes him further into the criminal world. By this moment in time, the last person he probably wanted to see afterwards was Detective Carter. Carter was here because he wanted Davis to basically flip on one of his former clients, Tariq St Patrick. He makes a threat of how he could help or hinder the outcome of his hearing, but that doesn't faze Davis. He gives as good as he gets. But he does know that Carter isn't someone who's messing around. We also later saw him turn to Tariq at Stansfield, but just a quick one while we're at Stansfield, Brayden was also here, where he met Elle, and this is one relationship you do want to keep an eye on. With Brayden and Tariq looking to get back into the streets, there will be added complications, and I wouldn't be surprised if Elle becomes an issue later on. I mean, the first thing she said to Brayden was about her dealer being out of town, which in my opinion could be a little clue as to who she is, perhaps undercover, so definitely one to keep an eye on. But Detective Carter and Tariq, he had a good little laugh as Tariq was putting on this innocent face, because long gone are the days where he could use the innocent card. He may have been able to use it in season 1 with Tamika, but Carter isn't buying it. He also seems like he knows how to read people, how Tariq was keeping calm, his breathing and his demeanor. Carter knows that Tariq will be a tough one to crack, but you can tell, he is relishing going up against someone who's never been able to be brought down before, at least not permanently. Now Carter really does have this dark aura about him. He's able to be aggressive, but remain calm and controlled at the same time, until you cross him. In episode 2 he threatened both Davis and Tariq in similar fashion, and Davis does warn Tariq, he's not like the rest of the cops he's dealt with. We just went through how he threatened Davis, but with Tariq, he indirectly threatened Tasha losing her WITSEC. So, as I mentioned before, this matchup between Davis, Tariq and Carter is going to be a boxing match. There are 8 rounds left of Go Season 4, but come the end, who's going to win? Or will someone be able to deliver a knockout beforehand? In my opinion, if I were in Davis and Tariq's shoes, I'd find a weak spot of Carter's, but does he have one? I personally think he does. Everyone does. So let's see what happens between Carter and Tariq St Patrick. Now the following day, when Monet wakes up, the move that she made causes a huge fuss with Kane. He's not happy because Monet may have made shit worse, but also because no doubt, he wants to be in charge. He wants to be the shot caller and the leader of the Tejada organization. He always has, especially after Lorenzo's death. But as Monet tells him to leave, this is where it starts to get a little interesting. Monet believes with Kane wanting the Tejada throne, she has a feeling Kane might have been behind the bullets. Now even though Diana and Drew kind of played this down, I would not be surprised if they started to run with this story a bit later on, especially when Monet starts to figure out exactly what happened, because that moment is definitely getting closer, so it's definitely just one to keep an eye on. With Diana, she was nervous because it was time to take the test, and her reaction gave it away. She was pregnant, which was later confirmed when she went to go see the doctor, who did ask some of the right questions, and one of them were, do you know who the father is? Now she didn't take too kindly to the questions, and she believes she does, but I do feel like there is a bit of a twist to this particular plot. Let's remember, Diana did sleep with both Tariq and also Salim, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was Salim's, but then she says it's Tariq's just to kind of save herself in this moment. But one thing's for sure, it definitely has added another complication to the whole storyline with the Tejadas and Tariq, and if I were in Tariq's shoes, I'd do well to remember what Kanan once said back in Power.
Shit, who's your son? I ain't never had no DNA test. I should have took it.
And look, with Diana, you really just can't rule out her manipulating you like she's done so before. Tariq's been burned way too many times, so I'm hoping he's kind of learned his lesson. On Monet, just wait until she finds out, because she's been there. She knows how tough it can be. So speaking of Monet, we saw her opening up to Diana and apologizing in season 3. And for the first time, she was opening up to Drew. However, the difference is she was actually trying to justify her actions of having Gordo and Lorenzo killed, rather than apologize, and that's what irritated Drew. He wants Monet to own up to what she did, say what she did wasn't right. So it goes back to what Lorenzo said in his hallucination scene. Monet said that everything she does for the family, just like she told Drew in 402. But she's been telling herself that lie for so long, she's starting to believe it. That's why Drew tries to make yet another move. But where Diana stops him, she tells him despite everything that they've been through, despite everything Monet's done and who she is, they can be better. What they didn't know was Monet was listening in on the conversation, although I don't think she heard the first part, because if she did, she'd definitely know that Drew and Diana were hiding a secret. Now this actually forced Monet to kind of self-reflect and reach out to Jeanette. She wanted to do better, be better, but she also feels like it may be too late, and I do too. I think it's way too late, because for her to kind of salvage their relationship, Monet has to change. It can't all be talk, she needs to show it with her actions. So in my opinion, as much as she wants to do right by her kids, as much as she wants a second chance, I honestly just can't see her changing her ways. Monet will always be who she is, which goes back around to the theme and the episode title, a leopard never changes his spots. Now in terms of street operations, we've got Kane keeping things moving, but because Monet fucked up Nomar's deal with the Russians, she wanted Kane to make things right, but he knew he couldn't do it on his own. This is where he made the call to Effie, and where Effie had a really big decision to make. On one hand, she had her interview at Stanford. On the other hand, it was her opportunity to bring the Russians to the table for Nomar, and also kinda save Kane's skin. So big decisions definitely had to be made in regards to her future. Now the way they were able to get the Russians to play ball again was by offering military grade weapons along with product. Going forward, they'd also be dealing with Effie only, not Kane or the Tejadas, again, pushing Effie even deeper into the street game. Now the deal that they made was for product and weapons, but that's not what Nomar agreed. Even though it was a very good deal for her, she thought it was time to teach Kane a lesson about sticking to the rules. But before she could make an example out of Kane, he was able to convince her he does have what it takes to do the shit maybe Obi can't. And this is definitely the start of a very unlikely romantic relationship, which will also cause a couple of knock-on effects. Effie and Kane's relationship will definitely be over, and it also probably spells the end for Obi. Across the episode, we saw Nomar questioning Obi's commitment, and also said it doesn't bode well for him when he couldn't get the Russians on board, something Kane managed to do, albeit with the help of Effie. So I do think Obi's time is coming to an end, but could he create a bit of chaos just before he is taken off the chessboard? Carter's pulled him in for questioning because of the connection in regards to the green cards for his brother, and that's also another point. Obi has a brother who's now on US soil, so Carter questioning Obi along with his brother, both of those storylines will definitely be at the center of the storm in episode 3. Now with Tariq, after the threat of Detective Carter, he went to visit Tasha, again, just like Tariq, only if they listen to Ghost.
I don't know any old wrinkled drug dealers. They're either dead or inside, Tasha. That doesn't scare you?
If they did, maybe Tasha wouldn't be working in a retail store with a creepy manager. She now has to do what she has to do just to pretty much survive. Now on Tasha being in WITSEC, she is on her last and final warning after she went MIA, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Carter chucks her out of WITSEC, just to give Tariq another little problem. Tariq also knows what Tasha's like, she'll want to finish what she started, and so I do think this won't be the last time we see Tasha. I do think she'll be back in New York at some point in the future. The question is, could she meet her fate, or could she even help Tariq start building his organization? Let's remember, Tasha was there as Ghost built his empire, so having someone like Tasha and Davis in your corner, it really isn't such a bad idea. On the flip side, just like Brayden said, they're finally out the game. Do they really want to risk it? I mean, it was only a month ago where Tariq and Brayden were sitting in this car, contemplating what life would be like just as regular college students. But now that Tariq's broke and having to deal with 3 jobs and his car breaking down, it seems like he prefers money and power that comes with a street game. And we all know Tariq's done playing games, especially when it comes to Tasha. He wants to build his empire back. He wants to protect and provide a better future for himself and his family. And I think he's finally come to the realization of who he wants to be.
If you want to survive, you're either a civilian or a gangster.
Tommy told him to pick a lane and stay in it. He either chooses the life as a civilian or a gangster. There ain't no in between. And I think Tariq has finally chosen the life that he wants to live. But first, it was time to get his car back. As we see 2-Bit parking up and walking into a restaurant, Tariq senses his opportunity. He still has his spare key, and just like that, Tariq is finally reunited with his Porsche. Now what I would say is, 2-Bit will definitely not let this go. Whether or not he saw Tariq, which I don't think he did, he won't let it go. He'll definitely be back, and he'll probably be back at a very bad time for Tariq, or maybe even at a good time. Maybe Tariq can start building his empire again, so when 2-Bit does approach him, he has something to offer, where they then create an alliance. But 2-Bit will definitely be back. Keep your eyes on 2-Bit. Now, towards the end of this episode, we see Tariq meeting with Monet. She wanted to meet with Tariq because she knows her kids aren't being totally honest with her in regards to who shot her, but neither was Tariq, because he knows it was Tasha. However, it would never have happened if it wasn't for Drew and Diana's betrayal, with Diana giving Kate Egan Tasha's address. Now, this was the first time Monet's ever heard the name, so we heard Tariq break down exactly who Kate was. And so I do think they are kind of setting it up for Monet and maybe also Tariq to pay her a visit. They're going to get down to the bottom of exactly who delivered the letter. What also might come into play is the Ring doorbell. But as much as Monet wants to end the person who's behind it, who we all know is Diana, there will be a twist to the story.